When you have an informed opinion on any topic, then let your voice be heard. That is what we do on Express Yourself. Express Yourself is a production of the Drury University Department of Communication and the Drury University Debate Union, where we teach students the arts and skills of debating and then encourage them to apply those skills in various forms of civil discourse. Austin Cassidy from Nixa, Missouri. Austin is a junior studying communication. His career goal is to be a business leader. His favorite speaker of all time is Donald Trump. Christopher Cassidy, a senior studying criminology and sociology from Nixa, Missouri. He wants to get his doctorate in criminology and continue to do research. His favorite speaker is Ronald Reagan. Kendall Stockard, a freshman studying French and marketing from Kansas City, Missouri. Kendall plans on going into nonprofit marketing. Her favorite speaker is Jimmy Fallon. Amarin Link, a sophomore majoring in education and writing from Mount Vernon, Missouri. Amarin wants to teach 4th grade and be a published novelist. He's a big fan of Eric Thomas. Our facilitator and moderator is Dr. Charlie DeBerry, director of the Drury University Debate Union. And now, here's Charlie.
Thank you and welcome to the program. We are discussing the cost of higher education in the United States. Specifically, we're discussing the dramatic increase that we have seen in the cost of tuition at public universities. So I want to go straight to the panel to find out what the problem is. Chris, what can you tell me?
The problem is college tuition keeps on increasing every year. Students are having to take out loans to meet those needs, and they're having to take out more loans every year to meet those increasing needs. Over time, this accumulates, however. Within 4 years, the average students can accumulate over $100,000 in debt.
At the same time, when you look at the problem with inflation, if you look at schools public schools, say when you look at Texas and how fast their tuition has raised versus the inflation rate, it may be raising at 7, 8, sometimes 10%, whereas inflation could be anywhere from 1, 2, or 3%. And that's ridiculous when you just think about the overall cost of how much people are spending to go to school. Families can't even save up for their children to go to school now. And at that same time, loans won't even cover it because federal subsidized and unsubsidized loans don't cover what tuition is at this point in public schools because how fast it is rising versus inflation.
Let's see, Amarin, what are you thinking?
Well, I think that there's a very logical reason that the tuition rates are rising so drastically, and I think that that is an increasing student demand for things that are not necessarily academic, such as increased laboratories, IT improvements, a new swimming pool, a better track, things like that, and that's actually driving up tuition prices. So we can't really be complaining about the tuition going up when we're demanding all these things in return.
Austin, so that's what's causing the dramatic increase?
Well, absolutely. I think that I'd like to add on what Kendall said, that after adjusting for inflation, the average cost of public school tuition in 1984 was $2,300, and today it's over $18,000. That's an increase of 232.4%. For example, here are some other common products and their price when at the same level of inflation if it were accounted for today. A movie ticket would cost you $26.55. A pound of bacon would cost you $14.30, and a gallon of gas would cost over $10. So these are huge. This is a huge issue, and college students shouldn't have to pay these outrageous fees, and inflation shouldn't be going up 6% every year. Whereas normal inflation only goes up about 2 to 3% every year. So this is definitely a huge issue that needs to be figured out.
Well, are people willing to sacrifice some of these facilities in order to get lower tuition?
I think in many ways they are. It's also, that's not the only reason that we look at these raises in tuition, but if you look at some of the schools that have capped tuition at inflation rate, they still get by with some of these really expensive necessities for their school because instead they go out for more donors and get donors to, say, fund a new building versus them paying for it out of pocket and through tuition rates.
Well, how much would it help if you only raised at the rate of? I mean, how long would it take? You said it's already out of hand. So how long will it take for if you stopped right now and say, okay, we're going to cap it at inflation? Is it going to make a big difference in 1 year, or is it going to take it 5 years before it's going to make a big difference in who can and who can't afford it?
I honestly believe that what we're going to be seeing in whatever solution we provide is a situation where the current students in these universities aren't really going to see much of a difference. They're going to be stuck with whatever the system is now. But then their children are going to have opportunities in which they can go to college without their parents saving up 10 years before the children are ever born.
Does that mean that we should be implementing these procedures now, or should we wait? Should we wait?
I still think that we should probably implement these procedures now so the effects can come into play fast enough for these children to be able to go to school. But I'm just saying that I don't think our current generation of young people is going to be seeing these effects in a positive way.
Well, do you think are you saying that it's become so expensive that it's not worth it? I mean, is it not paying off is the education not paying off?
Actually, yes. So President Obama decided that we should have this college ranking system, and what it does is it actually tells you how much the average graduate from that school makes after they graduate. It also tells you the average cost of that school and the average amount that students are taking out in loans for that school. And many of these schools, the amount they take out in loans does not touch anywhere where they would be the amount they're going to be making. The amount that they make would be so much lower than what they are having to pay off in loans that they can't even pay off their loans in a timely manner. There are people who are in their 40s and 50s who went to school years ago, took out loans to go to school, who are still paying off school loans.
Do you think it's possible that the universities are having to charge more because of community colleges absorbing a large number of students, so that universities are not getting the students for the full 4 years, and they're having to make up for that by increasing the tuition rate for the kids they do get?
I would definitely say so. I mean, if you look at it, a lot of kids who don't want to pay the exorbitant cost it costs to go to a public university will really prefer to go to a community college where they can get their general ed requirements out of the way, and then to where they can go into the public university and then just get their major done in 2 years. I mean, it just makes sense that that's going to impact the amount of income that public universities are receiving.
So when we look at schools that they may not, those credits they get at a community college may not transfer in to the exact equivalent. So a lot of these students may have to take, say, be there 3 or 4 years versus, say, having 2, even though they went to 2 years of community college, because not all these classes are transferring in. Is it really cheaper to go to community college and then do 2 years at a 4-year institution?
Well, considering that's what most people are doing now, I would say it is. And considering that the average course is 4 to 5 years, if people went to community colleges for, say, 2 years and then transferred back into a public university to where it only went to where they would still have to go 4 years to complete their degree, as you said, then I don't see why they would even go in the first place to a community college. Instead, it would make a lot more sense if they would check beforehand, and I think this is what happens a lot, to see what courses exactly do transfer so they know what they have to take and so what won't transfer, or what, so they won't have to deal with those courses that aren't transferring.
I disagree. I would not say that most students are going for a 2-year college for community college and then transferring into a 4-year university. That is not the norm. The norm is still going to either a public university for 4 years or a private school for 4 years. There is some students going to community college and then transferring in, but it is not the norm.
Look, you're missing the point here. The point is OTC has 4 times as many students as Jury. Now, let's say all those students went over to Jury. We wouldn't be having a financial crisis right now if it wasn't
but all
OTC.
those students don't go to Jury.
I think despite the solution to the argument at hand, there is still I think that the reason people are driven to going to these 2 years before they go into a bigger institution, no matter the extent of it, is driven by the fact that we have rising college tuition and that is increasing faster than inflation.
Right, I would completely
Okay,
agree.
so if you are saying that most of those students are not going to Jury, then if we say lowered tuition, capped it at inflation rate, would more of those students who go to community college transfer into Jury then versus, say, a public school?
Well, my question would be: Are the public universities increasing at the roughly the same rate as private universities, or does anyone know? Does anyone know if private universities are inflating at the same, roughly the same rate as public institutions?
Private school tuition is the inflation rate for that is increasing slower than public school, but it's still more than the average national inflation rate of 2%. It's around 3 to 4%, whereas public institutions it's rising 4 to 6%. And to put that in perspective, a 4 to 6% increase in inflation will raise your tuition about $400 to $600 annually. Within 4 years, you're going to be paying $1,200 more dollars than at the start of your college experience. And so, and then compared to private universities, it's just not rising as fast as public inflation.
Now, some people have argued that this may be a self-correcting problem and that we're seeing a plateau, and that is that there's been dramatic increases, but now it's starting to level off. And it just could be that the public universities are realizing that they have to slow down the increases to try to get those kids from not go to those community college and go ahead and come. In other words, the community college, while they've been hurting the universities, it may have a corrective action in keeping the universities to try to hold the price down.
I don't think anything is really hurting the college experience as much as the loans and the threat of loans before a student goes into college. And I think that the reason that we're dealing with these loans is because of two very well-intentioned federal things that are put into place, and that's that in America, every American should be able to achieve a college education, and also the ideal that every American should be able to pay off their student loans in full without them being discharged. And so I think that we've reached a serious issue here because we've reached some really awful consequences from this process. So the question would really be, how do we recover from the huge amounts of debt that people are going into now due to the inflation, and what will we do different in the future to make this?
Imran, to answer that question, I think to fix anything in the future, we're going to have to take action now. We can't continue to wait on issues like this. So if we were to cap tuition and inflation rate now, that will help in the future. And then at the same time, we need to look at schools that are doing this, such as there are places in Canada where they do this. And because more students are able to go to college and afford college, they have more people who are making more money, who are getting better jobs, and then there are more tax dollars based on income tax at that point. And with the places that they did this, they've seen significant improvement. And I think that not only in the long run it's going to help, but gradually in the short term, it's also going to help.
I know some universities are guaranteeing students the same price for 4 years. Do you think that that's possibly one stopgap measure, that when you come in as a freshman, that will be your tuition for the next 4 years? Do you think that's a good idea?
I think so. If Drury offered me that today, I would definitely say yes.
You would take that. Any other comments? Well, I'm going to start wrapping it up. Then, what I want to find out is, we've got the tuition. It's grown. It's hard for students. They're borrowing a lot of money, and so what? In a nutshell, if you will, what's the solution? What specifically could we do to address this problem? Go ahead and start, Kendall.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the solutions that we have to this problem is immediately or soon putting into place a cap on tuition. That means that tuition cannot rise faster than inflation rates. And then further down the line, we can implement other solutions, but there's only so much that can happen all at once. So if we do these things in steps, then we eventually could, at least for our children or the generation after us, they could be able to afford to go to college without having to fear that the inflation rate for their tuition is going to be more than their parents can afford to save up for.
All right, and Amron, I want to twist the question just a little bit for you. Do you think you were suggesting, not exactly a country club atmosphere, but you were suggesting that there's a lot of fluff that is being added to universities, extra swimming pools, extra this, extra that. So, do you think maybe if you do find a solution and you cap it, do you think that students will be seeing fewer and fewer extra programs and extra activities?
I think that they will, and I think that whenever there is an extracurricular activity that the majority of college students want to pursue, I think we're going to see more and more professors and students going for outside donors and donations in order to fund the programs that they're passionate about.
Okay. Chris?
And I would say, I'm going to take a more radical view. Instead, I would say that colleges need to stop focusing on building extracurricular activities in an attempt to attract students. Instead, what we need to do is get back to the root of education, which is focusing on improving liberal art thinking and improving the education system as a whole. We don't need social activities in colleges. That's not what the purpose of college is there for. College is there to gain a higher understanding and an education and specialization so that you can go on and then actually achieve something out of yourself.
Thanks, Chris. Go ahead, Austin.
One thing I'd like to say is that community colleges do help traditional four-year colleges, even though they may undercut colleges, because it presents a challenge for the traditional four-year colleges to actually create more incentives to bring students in, be it if it is those things such as better swimming pools and all of that, but they have to be careful because they don't want to build things that people don't necessarily want. They just have to be very smart with their money, do things that would attract more students, and I think that would be a big, that would solve a lot of the problems facing traditional four-year colleges and the increasing of inflation among traditional four-year colleges.
Okay, well, you would think maybe at some point that competition would come into play and help, but with everyone going up at the same time, the competition doesn't seem to be the answer. Thank you, panelists, for a fantastic job, and thank you, viewers, for tuning into this particular program. If you'd like to see more examples of Express Yourself, you may simply go to drury.edu/debate. And remember, the next time you have a difference of opinion on any given topic, keep emotions out of it, stick to the facts, and never make it personal. Then when you're ready, express yourself. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.